Welcome to 247 Real Talk. I'm your host, Julian Perry. It's a pleasure to be here with you once again for another episode of the 247 Real Talk podcast. A little difference in my recording today. I'm recording early in the morning. I was so exhausted I couldn't do my evening recording, so I got up real early to record to make sure that we got this week's episode in. It was important because this week I was affected by a lot of things that happened and that I read. And I felt that we needed to talk about it. So sit back, relax, and I'll be right back. I want to start out this week's episode, as you've seen me doing more and more in my weekly episodes, with an impactful short prayer that my pastor sent to me that I think sets the tone for my mood and for where my mind is. Visit me today, Lord. Visit me. Send to me the messengers, the prophets, the agitators, who invite me to see something beyond what I already know. Give me the openness to hear words of wisdom and redirection. Give me the humility to recognize when a season has ended and I need to chart a new course. Give me the courage to change my attitude, behavior, positioning, style, and functioning so I can be better equipped for the new opportunities which are ready to unfold in my life. Step into my life today, Lord, and rechannel me so that the shifts that I make this day will take me to a new level in my life. Lord, please visit me today. Amen. Welcome to all my listeners. Thank you so much for being here again with me, my supporters, new and old. Not that many new these days. People are not signing up at the rates that they used to, not subscribing at the rates they used to. Not sure if that is because it's not getting shared enough or because of the controversy of where we are, who we are, and the difficulty people are having in deciding which direction to turn. This will not be a long episode this week because I think if I go too deep, it'll go too long. I'm sure everyone in the United States, because even people around the world are reaching out to me, people I know in other countries, and asking, what the heck's going on here? And I'm watching as if I'm in this space that's unbelievable. I read yesterday that very quietly there was another executive order or something that removed anti-segregation from federal contracts. And when I heard that, and I could find the story, but I won't go into it because it's Reuters reported it and a couple other news agencies, and I don't want to go into reading the entire story. But basically, over the last week and a half, we've seen the DEI, or as they call it, scrubbed from things like Arlington Cemetery, where women and aviators, black aviators, and other people of color were given honorable mentions. Those things have been removed. Military leaders who were black, their references to them have been removed. And before I get into what's bugging me, let me tell you, as I was thinking about this is the analogy I came up with. And sometimes my analogies are weird and come from weird places, but somehow this picture came in my mind of someone who has an apple tree in the back of the yard that they can see right out their kitchen window. And for many years, they tried to get this tree to grow and bear, and they struggled with it. And they struggled, they pruned it, they fertilized it, they did everything that they needed to do. And they looked out the window recently and saw an apple tree that was not 100% full, but was heavily laden with fruit. So they were almost or getting much closer to their goal of an apple tree that was overburdened or overwhelmed with fruit. And then they looked out the window one day and they noticed that the red apple that they saw on the right side was missing. And they looked out the window the next morning and they saw another apple missing. And they looked out again, they saw more apples missing, and they couldn't understand where are these apples. And then they decided to set a camera up. And they caught in the camera someone coming each day and picking their apples. And instead of putting a fence around the apple tree, they were so stunned by the loss of the apples that they just stood there mesmerized, frozen in time, staring at the apple tree. What the heck am I talking about? I'm talking about what's going on in America today as fruit by fruit are picked from the tree of civil rights, of the achievements of civil rights. The civil rights movement was significant to everyone's life, regardless of race, creed, or color, because it opened doors that opened avenues for people of lesser means, of socioeconomic challenges, along with the removal of segregation and the rights to blacks and women, people of color. And those civil rights are being picked away one by one to reverse this nation to where we were before the civil rights movement. We're seeing subtle movements to remove people of color from the military, from the ranks of the military, to erase any reference to the history that happened, that we have lived and those before us have lived, that those before us have died for us. Some of those people we know about in the history books, some of us are relatives of people who have died, lost their lives, not just tirelessly devoted to the movement, but actually been murdered or killed. And here we are staring out the window, frozen in time, as someone picks away at our lives. There were so many things that angered me that caused me to have to get up early this morning to record this episode, and couldn't wait any longer because I tossed and turned all night. I couldn't sleep well because I had so much going on in my head. The other thing that came across my mind was when President Biden won the election and beat President Trump. It seemed like from the next day, no matter what it was, personal issues or public issues or whatever he believed or didn't believe or whatever rhetoric or story he wanted to tell, President Trump started campaigning. He kept himself in the news voluntarily or sometimes involuntarily, but we did not stop hearing about President Trump, his thoughts, his ideas, his ideology, however ridiculous or not, or agree or disagree. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that the man was present from the day after he lost the election to the day he won it again. The only thing I've heard about Tim Walz and Kamala Harris is a couple of speeches she made after, and then who she's contracted to write her book or her stories. And now you hear whispers of people saying, well, should we look for the same candidate in 2028? Why? We are being devoured. People of color, people of socioeconomic challenges, people that are less than the top 1% or whatever, are sitting there, as my pastor said to me, the entire Democratic Party and half the Republican Party who don't agree with what's going on here have taken a knee. They've bowed to whatever's going before them and have thrown or have bent their heads and said, we have been defeated. 435 members in the House of Representatives with a thin margin between Democrats and Republicans. And this nonsense is allowed to go on. We keep reading of what's happening in these executive orders and things that are passing silently in the night because we still have a few news outlets out there that are willing to stay true to journalism. But the fact of the matter is that we had people, and I'm going to call names, and I don't usually do that because I think names distract because we then focus on the names rather than the message. But in this case, we've seen former President George Bush, even though he's, opposite the Democrats or opposite Biden, stand up for righteousness. We've heard the power and the ability for President Barack Obama and his wife Michelle Obama to invoke into the people, I ran my words, invoke energy into the people to stand up. We saw an election where Kamala Harris and Tim Walz just lost, and they had made all these pledges to Americans. Where are all of you? Are you saying that even though you have the power to stand peacefully and raise up awareness and people to the point where they demand that this nonsense stops and that the legislature and the judiciary are not overridden by a small group of people who are running rogue in our country, who have an ideology of, I hate to say it, but it's beginning to seem like if you're going to erase everything about people like me and people of color and women and LGBTQI and all these things, you are creating a supremacist society again. Are we supposed to start the civil rights fight from scratch? What is wrong with you, America? Wake up. And then everybody's talking about, oh, well, historically, midterm elections, usually the House flips and there's such a thin majority, and there's such a thin majority in the House and the Senate that it's likely to change and then no bills can pass. News flash, breaking news. Number one, they are circumventing a lot of the laws with their little things they're doing that are having big impacts. And they're putting this country into a chaos. They're even finding ways to ignore judges' orders and then to call for an impeachment. How can anyone outside of the judiciary, unless the judge has committed a crime, call for the impeachment of a judge? The minute you find that judges cannot do their job because they have to fear of losing their living, even though they took an oath and they're trying to do the right thing, we have a problem. And I got a bunch of friends of mine. I've talked to you about this friend who I'm still struggling with, and I'm getting closer to unfriending, who jumped on Facebook the other day and talked about, I hope they impeach him. And I'll whisper this secret to you. That friend of mine, his father was a judge. I wonder how he would have felt in the time of his father's time on the bench if he was impeached for doing his job according to the law, not according to the fact that I can't oppose someone because they're a senator, or I can't oppose someone because they're a president, because of the interpretation of the law and his power that he's been given as a judge within the boundaries of the law. We need the Barack Obamas, the Michelle Obamas, the George Bushes, the Tim Walzes, the entire Democratic Party, and those Republican Party who still have a sense of morals and ethics left to stand up united now, to let the country who has been impacted and will be impacted in a way that there's going to be a struggle to recover, see that there is unity there still in righteousness and in doing the right thing. My pastor said, like I said, they've taken a knee. I've heard different pastors talk about this scenario right now, and I recognize that the people who are fighting for us are people from the churches, our pastors. Some of the loudest voices I'm hearing who are calling on people to stand their ground, who are calling on people in Congress to stop this, are pastors. The average person who claims righteousness, who claims that they love their party, who claims that they won't stand for nonsense, is silent. What do you think is going to happen if they continue down this path where it gets harder and harder for us to make a living? We're going to be so absorbed in struggling every day to pay a bill, which we already are, that they're going to run right over us with whatever else they're going to pass. And all of a sudden, we're going to wake up one day and say, how did we get here? And it will be too late. And even if it's not too late, the ladder that we'll have to climb to get back to where we were, it'll be almost insurmountable, which is exactly what this contingent of people who are destroying our Constitution, our rights, our countries, and the way of freedom that America knows, that America is being a leader to the world to show this is their goal. And right now, we're running a race, and they're leading us so far that we can barely see the backs of their shirts, and the numbers on their shirts. This is a marathon that they are sprinting in while we're still running, trying to figure out whether we want to be in the race or not, whether we're actually going to put on our cleats and we're going to start to run on the turf of this journey. I am with a small voice. I'm a voice that most likely most of them don't even care about. But I care about human life. I care about us being united to support each other, to live in decency, to help each other live, survive, earn, and prosper. I care about the American dream, the dream that we all could achieve what we want to in a society that's decent, that lives and exists in a manner that we are an example to the world of righteousness and the way we run a humane society that's respectful of all people, accepting of all people, loving of all people. But most of all, like most of these politicians who are destroying our country like to say, God bless America. And I'm here with some good news for those of you who are beginning to lose hope and those of you who have lost hope. If you've lost hope in mankind, don't lose hope in God. I will say it to the end of every single podcast if I have to. And I don't care about those who ridicule me because they think that I'm living in a small contingent that's left in this world. I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. And what is happening today is not a surprise to him. Evil things happen. Good things happen. He witnesses them all. He has dominion over all of them. He can change them. He can break them. He can make them. And even though we struggle, and even though you hear the desperation in my voice, I also know that he will never leave us. Those who believe in him, accept him, worship him, obey him, fear him, and love him, he will never leave you nor forsake you. No, this may not be a religious service, but I'm going to preach to you what is true and what is righteous and what can make a difference in your lives. Stand tall. Do the right thing. Live within the laws, but stand up and be heard. Get others involved so the voices get louder. Let all of those 435, how many of them are up for re-election in November 2026, let them know that every single one of their jobs is on the line. And stop being so brainwashed when these people come out and say, I will fight for you. Look at what's happened in the last 2 years. If you re-elect me, I will make sure it doesn't happen again. Yes, right? Really? Let them all. And it doesn't take a long, hard journey. It's not like the days of old where we had to write a letter on a piece of paper legibly and put a stamp and go to the post office. Almost every single member of the Congress has a website, has a contact email. It may not get to them right away. It may get to their staff who sort of filter through their messages. But if you send it enough, create one message, and every day send it to the same email address over and over again. One person does it, they hit delete. 10 people do it, they hit delete. 50,000 people do it? No. That becomes a problem to them. Put them on notice. Your job is on the line just like our lives are on the line. Do not for a moment assume that you're going to come and fill our heads with this nonsense again about how much you're going to fight for righteousness and expect that we're going to put you right back where you were to enjoy the perks of the job while you sit and look all the people that you made your promises to and watch their lives degraded day in and day out and do nothing about it. You have a job. I have a job. I got to get up every day and work to feed my family. You need to do the same. I have deliverables. You need to have the same. And you need to be required and held accountable by the people who elected you to do so. For those of you who are stuck on the division of ideology between Republican and Democrat, let me leave you one statistic. 77.3 people voted for President Trump. 75 million people voted for candidate Harris, Vice President Harris. If 77 million people are there, and I know many of those people who I've spoken to offline are now worried, are now in regret because they were not rich. They thought they were voting for different, but not what they're getting. The 75 million people who voted for Harris are likely exactly where they were before. Imagine if over 75 million people in this country stood up and said, stop. I guarantee you that a good portion of those 77 million that voted for the current administration will join. We're not talking violence. We're talking about standing up and being heard and saying, we elected you not to do what you feel like when you wake up in the morning or whatever mood you're in, but to do what we ask you to do for us, in the way we ask you to do for us, with the results that we asked for. And if you can't, then step aside and let someone who can do it. And don't fling this unrighteousness in our faces, having people who are not even people we elected, running our lives, digging into our personal lives, seeing information that no one else can, circumventing the requirements of vetting and all the things, security clearance. People who are agreeing to remove any trace of people of color and women and LGBTQ, whatever, from our society, from our history books, so the next generation of children will read a history that is made up, that is fabricated, that is missing all the essence that defines it as history. Let these words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in the sight of my Almighty, and hopefully call you to action, to do as you need to do, to stand in a time of history that will define who we are, whose we are, and whether or not we reclaimed what was rightfully ours. Until the next time, thank you for coming into your homes and for the privilege of reaching out to you. I pray you have a great week, a great weekend, and hopefully the calls to action around the world prompt you to act, to do the right thing, to stand up and be heard. God bless.